All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Danielle Dahl. I will be moderating today's Diversity and Inclusion Council Fireside Chat series. Today we have three important impact leaders that I'm really excited to introduce to you. But first, I want to give you some context around these three individuals and the organizations they lead. The Diversity and Inclusion Council has selected these three organizations who best represent Snowflake's diversity and inclusion values. As we know, embracing each other's differences is a core value of our organization. We recognize and appreciate the importance of creating an environment in which all employees feel valued, included, and empowered to do their best work and bring great ideas to the table. So let's meet these true impact makers. As some of you may be familiar with, Nicole Collins-Puri is back with us today. Nicole is a social justice visionary, strategist, advocate, and mentor who has committed her life to unleashing the potential of untapped communities. She's the CEO of Techbridge Girls, which was one of the earliest organizations to focus on introducing girls in marginalized communities to the STEM fields. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
Rhonda Allen is her life work has been to create the conditions for people to thrive and lead in ways that are equitable, scalable, and path changing. She is the CEO of DevColor, which equips Black software engineers with an unparalleled community of support, accountability, and professional development to shape the future as technology industry leaders. Welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you so much.
And last but not least, we have Aaron Walker, who he officially founded Camelback Ventures in New Orleans, but he actually started in 2015, before 2015, an entrepreneur pilot program in Brooklyn and out of his living room. So since then, Camelback Ventures has supported over 75 underrepresented entrepreneurs with social impact ventures around the country. Camelback Ventures is an accelerator that identifies, develops, and promotes early stage underrepresented entrepreneurs with the aim to increase individual and community education and generational wealth. Welcome all of you today. Thank you. So let's learn how these true leaders have got to where they are today and what impact truly looks like. So you guys ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Cool. We're cozy in our little fireside chat lodge here. Okay. So first off, I would love to just learn here from a Snowflake perspective, what brought you to lead? I know, Aaron, you found Camelback Ventures, but these organizations, who would like to kick it off?
I mean, I'm happy to start.
Thanks, Aaron.
I think for me, it is sort of like the accumulation of life's work, in so many different areas of life. I have been what my wife and I joke is the lonely only in so many different places, whether it is at the law firm or in law school or, on a baseball diamond, et cetera. And so I think that for me, starting Camelback Ventures was this decision that, there are so many different places where people want to have impact, and there's so many folks of color in particular who are trying to start social impact organizations, but they're not receiving the support that they need and quite frankly they deserve. And so, before Camelback, I had started two other companies and had sort of gone through that experience of trying to raise money and trying to find connections and try to find coaching and just realized how challenging that is, period, but particularly when you are a person of color. And I thought, like, what would it look like to create a place and a platform to elevate the genius that's already there? And so, that being sick and tired of being the only one, and knowing that there were other people who were going through the same thing, motivated me to create Camelback. And I think about my own experiences and saying, like, how could I solve that problem?
Thank you, Aaron.
That's so powerful when you talk about just community and creating a solution to a problem that you've experienced. DevColor was founded with a similar ethos by Black software engineers for Black software engineers. 11 engineers came together and recognized, to your point about lonely only, like it's really hard to be the first only different in a field, on a team, and in true kind of tech fashion started building what they wanted to see. And so we were founded in 2015, 11 folks around the table saying, how can we create community and support and our own kind of accelerator for our careers and for our impact. And so we've been around for 5 years, and Def Color has grown from 11 to just over 500 software engineers all across the field of tech. And I'm really grateful to be leading the work and leading alongside this incredible community of powerhouses in their respective fields. So I know we'll talk more about our work, but it's a real privilege to lead a community that is creating the kind of change in partnership with the broader field that they want to see.
Yeah, and I think about our founder, Linda Cacalis, who had a vision over 20 years ago that she didn't believe or want to subscribe to this theory that girls just did not want to be in STEM, or they were not interested in STEM. And thank goodness she was an academic, because she sought after the research. Show me the research that, formulates that hypothesis and creates credible evidence that that is the real reason why our girls continue not to persist into this field. And what she found in that research is that it has nothing to do with our girls. STEM education is available for our girls, and they are willing and want it. But it's the way it's delivered, it's the environment that it's in, and it's the exposure that they are provided that prevents their interest to be cultivated and manifest into a pathway to thrive in this field. And so that is the essence of our work and our impact, is that how do you create the environment for our girls to actually flourish and persist? And it's not them that we need to put the emphasis on, but it's everything around them that we need to reevaluate, reassess, and redesign in order for them to be in their fullest potential.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would love to learn a little bit more on, we understand kind of the mission and the vision of, where you guys are coming from in your respected organizations. But is there something that truly brought you to where the goals are personally touching you, that it makes you wake up every morning like, man, is there anything like that resonates, Rhonda?
Yeah, I can kick it off, because I'm thinking about just the power of proximity and being close to issues and communities that we care about. So for me, I think there's been a lot of conversation about the moment that we're in as a country, as a world. And I was at a point personally where I had led great teams and had done great work, and to be able to explicitly lead an organization that works with and for the advancement of Black leaders and literally building the future that our children and communities will steward. That is just such a privilege. As a mom, as a former teacher, it is a real privilege to be spending my time boldly and explicitly supporting Black leaders in tech to build the future that they want to see. So it is personal for me, and I think it is personal and collective, right? So when I think about all the research that says diverse teams are stronger, we make better stuff, make better products whenever we have leaders from diverse backgrounds at every stage of the way. That couldn't be more true in my experience, and I think in the work that we do. So it is deeply personal and collective, and I think about the impact that Def Color leaders can make in the work we do together.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just thinking about this moment that we in, I don't know about most people, but I am in a very reflective moment in life in general. And 20 just has been the number of the moment for us. My organization celebrated our 20th year anniversary. As I was reflecting almost to the date 20 years ago, I stepped into my first job at AT&T, where I was introduced to my new team that was bringing DSL as a consumer product to households. And I think about that moment where I could not have been more scared and felt ill-equipped and did not feel like I had the tools or even the reference to have voice and knowledge to bring value to the conversation. I didn't come from a background of STEM education. I was a poli-sci major that had this amazing opportunity, and I wanted to figure out how to make the best about it, right? And in that process, I also learned about the power of corporations and the ability to shape and create social norms and social access and social elevation for communities. And so I fast forward 20 years, I'm in this organization that is speaking to girls grew up like me, that look like me, but hopefully when they sit in that seat in their next STEM revolution or new innovation for the next generation, they feel equipped and confident and have a reference point to know that they can and should be there and they belong there just as much as their peer next to them. So I think that it's real personal to me, and I've been reflecting a lot on that in this moment, because I never realized until this this real connection of 20 years of being part of the next evolution of technology, and now telling our girls that you need to sit at this table, and not only sit at the table, but shape the way it's going to be for their communities.
Yeah. You know, Nicole, as you were talking, I was thinking, you know, one of the things I didn't know, but as I learned more and sort of got into the history, was that, you know, the first software, you know, engineers and coders were women. That men had decided that was the easy stuff, that they were gonna do the cool stuff, they were gonna play with hardware, and so, you know, they let you know, women have those roles, and then obviously we see now, you know, the 2 generations later, you know, programs like yours and others that are, you know, trying to, you know, support women in STEM, which, you know, include software, but other spaces too. And it's just one of those things where you just realize, and to your point, like, you know, there were decisions that were made, you know, that sort of created the situations that we're in. It was nothing ever inherent about, you know, the person who was in that seat, or what they lacked. There was, you know, a certain set of people, you know, in this case, men, particularly white men, making a certain set of decisions about who was going to do what. And, you know, just ironic to me that, you know, now we have all these programs trying to do that, when they were there in the first place. You know, but on that piece of history, you know, I remember when I was, you know, sort of pitching the idea for Camelback, and I had a meeting with Dr. Michael Lomax, who's the president of UNCF, and, you know, one of the things that he reminded me of was, you know, I was sort of telling all these things we wanted to do, and social entrepreneurs, and, you know, we're not in these spaces, and the face of entrepreneurship doesn't look like us, and, you know, he's like, we've always been here. Like, don't get it twisted. Don't let anyone sort of make you think that this is like, you know, you're trying to like usher us into a new space. We've always been doing this, and so it was just a reminder to me that sometimes you can get caught up in certain narratives. And you can forget yourself, and you can forget your history. And it made me think back to my, you know, at that time, my grandfather, who was 94, had just passed away. And I thought to myself, actually, I know entrepreneurs. My grandfather had started a construction company, and before I was even born, he started a grocery store. And I was like, oh yeah, like, you know, this is in my lineage. This is in my history. And so, you know, there was something to build off of there, at least for me, and sort of making this personal, which is like, we've always been here. We just haven't had the same sort of platforms. And how could Camelback be a mechanism to do that?
Yeah, that is so powerful. When you talk about your grandfather, I could imagine we probably all have that story, right? I think about my great grandmother, same, right? Like, she would tell us, you know, you have the bouquet of the world to pick from in our community, and a wealth of resources and gifts that we can mobilize. So that really resonated. I think it's awesome too that like each of us are attacking a really big problem from different angles, right? And from multiple angles. You talked about systems and like really moving something huge. And so I think that's really neat to think about, like, we're all at different points in engaging with leaders, whether they're young girls or mid-career or entrepreneurs and people trying to scale. But it's powerful to think about how we're each moving the collective in partnership with our communities. It's awesome.
And I would just say, Erin, thank you for highlighting, lineage. Like we already have been here. It's something with Techbridge girls that we are just being unapologetic that our girls no longer need an invitation. Stop inviting to us to something that we already belong to and own. And it's really about this counter narrative that we're trying to create greater impact. Because at the essence of everything, it's about belonging. How are we creating environments and spaces and agency within our own selves to know that we can navigate in any spaces and create that sense of belonging because we know we already have ownership, tools, knowledge, skills to be in that place. And history that tells us, even though in the macro it may not tell us, but our history has always told us that we belong. We have trailed the way, we have broken barriers, we have made the impossible possible. And so I think each of us, even though we're hitting the system, the pipeline at a different point, the through line is that our communities belong in this place and we're creating a platform so not only can they thrive, but we can also make the system and the pipeline change so that you can actually realize the fullest potential of the possibility of STEM.
Thank you. Which leads me to kind of following up of this positive energy that I feel, this passion behind your guys' words is more around, a successful day in your field, like successful year, successful quarter. What does success look like in your respected spaces along this journey?
I'm thinking back.
I mean,
you go.
I mean, here's the reality, right? Which is that you get into this work because you love the problem that you want to solve. But when you're there, ED or executive director, CEO, whatever your title is, most of your day is spent raising money. So I would be lying if I didn't sort of say that most of the ways that I've measured success and whether I get to keep my job is am I, using my platform to provide resources for the organization. So that's one, but in all seriousness, I think in many ways, our success is the success of our fellows. And I imagine Nicole and Rhonda would sort of say something similar, but I'll let them speak for themselves. Is that, there is no Camelback without the fellows and the success that they are bringing forth every day, right? So, I think about in the last 6 years, we've had almost 12.5 of our fellows who were named to the Forbes 30 under list, right? So that's a piece of success. They've raised over $60 million in follow-on funding, after the funding they've gotten from Camelback. That's a success. And so really what keeps me going and sort of how I define it is not really anything about me. I feel like I have a role to play and I'm going to do that the best I can while I'm here. But it's really about, are we, giving them the resources, so that they can, reach their potential. And as long as that's happening, I feel like that's how I'm defining success.
Completely agree. I'm thinking about 2020 and looking back, I don't know that I would have thought I would have defined it as a successful year per se, but under all of the circumstances, it was really incredible to see to your point, Erin, members of our community thriving, taking leaps in their career. We measure collaboration and some successes by the way members give and receive props or kudos to each other, if you will. And there were thousands, around 6,000, I think, props given last year for folks saying things like, this person helped me navigate an IPO, or this person helped me, have that hard conversation at work. We had more than 60% of our members in 2020 get promoted or make a major career advancement. And so in that year, for us to see those kinds of indicators of success, it is directly linked to how awesome and dedicated and focused our community is, both on supporting each other and in influencing and impacting the field. So likewise, I take no credit for a successful day. I literally am wow, I get to watch these hundreds of incredible leaders make things happen with and for their companies, their teams, the world, literally. And that's a gift. And so for me, to your point, Erin, it's like, how can I support that, help fuel that, bring partners into the work so this community can grow both in reach and impact? So there were some real successes in 2020, and I'm excited for the year ahead.
Impact for me is reflected in one of our alum, Eileen Iniguez, who grew up in East Oakland, California, came to our program in middle school for the free pizza flyer that she received during a back to school night. Stayed through the program through middle school, got to experience field trips of local corporations to learn about STEM careers and STEM opportunities, met a role model that was our board member and stayed connected to her through high school that also supported her into going to UC Berkeley for a data science degree, and then graduating with that data science degree and coming back to Techbridge Girls to say, how can I help? But also for me, because I was just coming back, joining the organization or coming into the organization, I asked her, how can we help? And this was an eye-opener for me as I also learned the organization. When she said, as a woman Latinx from East Oakland, graduate with a degree in data science from UC Berkeley, said after her graduation, I am still looking for a job. That blew my mind. So it made it really important to learn that we can't forget about social capital. Many girls, especially girls from marginalized communities, are focused on getting through, that they don't have space and time always to build that social capital. But because we had it, we called on our partners, our funders who have been funders of the organization and said, if you want to walk this talk, I have an alumni ready for you. And within a month, 2 offers, and now she travels the world. She works at the company that inspired her at her first field trip that she ever had away from her home. And now she lives in Texas, takes her mom to China, making 6 figures, living a life that she could never imagine. And so for me, what success looks like is not only Eileen, but the floodgates of Eileen's that we can create. Every day I work to work myself out of this job, because if I don't have this job, then that means the system has been solved, right? And so that is what success will be, is when I can say I am no longer needed. And until that day, I still just hustle, raise money, be visionary, do all the things that we as leaders have to do to keep our organizations going. But that's the guiding light that keeps me going as well.
Great way to, oh, go ahead, Erin.
No, I was just going to add that, at a different point in my career, I was a teacher. And I feel like one of the things about being a teacher is you never get to see what happens to the students, at least most of them. But like one of the pleasures of this job is you get to see what happens to the kids. You're an adult, they're an adult, they usually hang around long enough that you kind of get to see what happens. And I think that's kind of cool.
Thank you. So we talk about, how you got to these organizations. It's personal, it's collective. There's a lot of depth with this cause and these initiatives and within your organizations. And, the question is, what is the reality to make a true impact? Like, what goes into making an impact? Who wants to unpack that?
I can share an initial thought. When I think about true impact, there's something about moving from just transactional interactions and to a place of like really transformational and meaningful partnership. And so for me and for our community at Dev Color, that looks like really connecting in a sustained way over time. Like, yes, to fuel and fund the work, but also to share time, expertise, and resources for our shared mission and shared priorities. And Nicole mentioned walking the talk. Like, to me, impact is a leader stepping back and reflecting and saying, like, what are my values? What do I care about? And how can I increasingly align my choices, my decisions, my investments with those values? And so when I think about our work, making sure that we are supporting leaders from marginalized backgrounds, amplifying the voices and creating and supporting pathways for Black leaders to make their communities better, our communities better, companies better, and therefore the field better. Those are values that I think lots of folks can get behind and actually walk out in partnership with organizations like ours who are doing the work, and like Erin and Nicole's. And so that piece around sustained, like really doing the work together, is something that comes to mind for me.
I reflect on Snowflake's values, right? It actually is a great blueprint for impact. When you put your customer first, as you know, you define your customer, you know the outcome that you want to have. You do market analysis and deep understanding of what they need in order to move your product forward or amplify it. Same aspect. Integrity always. Like, if you can't walk the talk and what you want and you live by that same, then you can't really create clear impact. Think big. If impact is not for the small hearted, like when I told my team 1 million girls by 2030, no flinch. Like, yes, that's what we're going to do. You can't think small, because impact is about changing systems, but it also is about changing minds and hearts. So you have to think big and about how to be able to do it. Be excellent. That is the reality. We all, especially all of us Black leaders, fortunately, our level of excellence is beyond excellent because of the reality in which we have to navigate. And so all of us have to raise to the level of excellence in order to actually achieve impact. Make each other the best. The only way you can make other people the best is when you act the best yourself and behave the best yourself, so that you can be a model and have a reflection of what best could look like. So you can't ask of somebody else if you're not also doing it yourself. Get it done. Making an impact is one of my favorite quotes from Shirley Chisholm, is not standing on the sidelines complaining, but it's about implementing ideas and getting it done. Own it, no matter if it's the success or the failure in the process toward impact. Know that you have to own your part in that pathway in toward moving impact to fruition. And then embrace each other's differences. Know that impact is not done by itself. Impact takes a collective action and collective strengths and diversity of thought and understanding and experiences in order to create the greatest impact for all those who would benefit from it.
Well, I hesitate to go after that. I feel like you said all that needs to be said. The only thing I'd add is I just think it takes more staying power than most people appreciate or have the heart for. And so, sometimes, we want the answer, we want the cleanup to be faster than it actually is, and oftentimes it's not going to be done in a 2-year, period and a 3-year grant. You're talking, 10 years at minimum, if not many more than that. And so I think that's just the other reality of making an impact, is that you're going to have staying power and be committed to what you're doing.
I'm happy you bring that up, because Nicole's mentioned this at our previous fireside chat, is around the idea of a journey. This is a journey. And I think a lot of folks, just kind of with what's going on around the world, is they're expecting things to happen immediately. I think that's just the way our culture is embracing kind of how you order things. It's instant gratification, boom, boom, boom. And really the effort goes behind making an impact and instilling those values and all these different facets. So thank you for sharing that. That was powerful. I got goosebumps. Nicole, I think you need to be sharing our value slide and new hire orientation every Monday. So powerful. So let's bring it down. You know, you tied in Snowflake, and I appreciate you for doing an amazing job on introducing those values once again to our community. And as a Snowflake, you know, how can an individual not at Snowflake, you know, we're obviously speaking just to the community here internally, but how can a Snowflake make a true impact? And what does that journey look like? And, you know, I'd love to just kind of explore those many different areas and pathways that, you know, is part of that individual's journey.
Yeah, I can start with something. You know, I remember when I was first starting Camelback, I had breakfast with this woman I had gotten introduced to, and the whole idea was like pitch her to, like, you know, get her to support Camelback. And what I said to her was that, you know, entrepreneurs of color need the same thing that everyone else needs, which is coaching, capital, and connections. And, you know, she was, you know, a woman of means, and I think I'd always thought of capital only. And obviously, you know, that's an important piece. I'm not trying to downplay that. But I think those other two pieces, the coaching piece and the connection piece, wasn't something that she hadn't really thought about, and that she actually had a lot more resources to bring to the table beyond just money. And so I think the same thing applies to someone who works at Snowflake. Is if you look across those, you know, at Camelback, we call them the 3 C's, coaching, connections, and capital. How can you give something that you have across those 3 areas to a cause or to an organization that you support or that you care about, that you want to be a part of. And, you know, I think if people think about it in those 3 ways, that they actually have a lot more to give than they're giving themselves credit for.
That. The first thing I would say is, you know, to this theme we have around just like values and action alignment and walking the talk, I think it's important for us individually to start close to home, right? To start with ourselves, to really reflect on where we are living into our values and where we have room to grow, and to actually put a plan in place, a sustained plan in place to make progress. I think about managers, I think about leadership teams, executives, individual contributors, like at every level of Snowflake and other companies, there are opportunities to walk out our values. So that's where I would start. And then beyond that self-work, I think about partnership. Erin, you said it so well. I think about the importance of really coming arm in arm with organizations and leaders who are proximate to the issues you care about. And number one, trusting those leaders to both make decisions and to funnel and fuel resources in a way that will have an impact, and partnering in the ways that are helpful. So funding the work, right? And bringing resources, time, talent, expertise to, I mean, you said it, coaching, capital, all of that. It's really, really important to holistically partner, and to partner in a way that is not transactional, but deeply, deeply meaningful. So those are the things that come to mind for me.
And I would just add is like starting with your why. Like, why is this important to you personally or to the organization more largely? Because, and it has to be more than the pressures of society. And let's just be honest, we are in a moment that a lot of companies are feeling pressured, right? Because the world is saying that you need to be racially just, equitable, and to march to a consciousness that has been, you know, looked over for many, many years. So let's really get down to, you know, why is this important? And again, when I left AT&T a decade after I started, I was leading diversity and equity and inclusion efforts for the company. And I thought about, you know, the why was, yes, a business imperative, right? Like, you could be doing 10 times the fold if you really invest, uplift, break out of your norms, and start to engage and lift up the brilliance that is being left behind. You know, why for your own self is why, because I want to be, you know, a part of the next generation that sees no barriers or limitations to their possibility. And you have to kind of feel that in your core, because your impact, your legacy will be a little watered down if there is not passion and, you know, just relevancy for it for yourself. And so I always say being able to articulate and understand your why this is so important, and then being willing to shout it out to the rooftops, so that then you can do the 3 C's that Erin talked about. Like, that makes it more easy, because you're going to be pushed up against things that are the comforts that if you're not sure with your why, you're not going to be able to push through them, right? And there's a lot of stuff that we do that is in our comfort, that we need to have something else propelling us forward past that comfort into our discomfort to really get to that impact.
Yeah, you know, I really appreciate that last thing you said, Nicole. This woman I just referenced to, in my story, you know, one of the things that, you know, when she thinks about her philanthropy, you know, her and her husband decided that they wanted to hurt a little bit. So, like, if it doesn't feel a little bit uncomfortable, the number, the number on the check we're about to write, like they feel like they're not doing enough. But I say that not about money. What I'm hearing you say also is it has to apply to the other things too, right? It has to apply to, you know, maybe those non-financial ways. Like if it's not forcing you to stretch, or, you know, you don't feel a little bit uncomfortable, then you probably could be doing more. And so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Likewise.
I feel like that space is where like true innovation lives, in that uncomfort zone of like, you know, the struggle's real, but guess what? That's where strength, you know, comes from. That's where you find that inner peace. And thank you for sharing that. You brought up, Nicole, something about legacy. And I think this is really impactful, because as what I took from, you know, the dialogue today and continuing to hear is around this inner why, this personal journey, and really then identifying and figuring out those pathways to make an impact, and what that personal legacy would be. So has there been any type of legacies that have made an impact to you personally, that, you know, kind of just stands out that you would love to share?
I mean, so many. I mean, I'm a Black woman in a CEO position that is married to a South Asian man that has a 5-year-old child, that grew up in a community that was an only, that was a White House intern, that, you know, I mean, yes, I stand on many shoulders, just because of my being, period, of where I sit today. But I always go back to, and it's not a legacy because I should say it's a living legacy. I just celebrated my mother's 70th year birthday. And in that, we had, you know, a Zoom of 40 something friends and family that talked about the 70 years, because we've had folks that known my mom since 6 years old on the call, and then of course my grandmother, and that can speak to, I know, all her life. But you know, I think about her legacy, and they call my mom Little Sissy is her nickname, and then they call me Little Sissy. And I think about what people were talking about her legacy, her heart of caring for others, her strength, her fortitude, her fearlessness, her resiliency, her love for family. And, you know, I hope, and I said this to her, that I can get at least 1% of what she has given to so many others, because she has just been a giving heart. It is her presence. And so I feel like that is part what I hope my legacy will be, is that when people say my name, it's not about being a CEO. It's not about what I accomplished, but it was how I made people feel and what I did for others. And so that's the legacy that I hope to be able to leave behind when it's my time, and hopefully not in a long time. But that's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah,
Go for it, Rhonda.
Okay. Thank you. I'll add on to this theme around family. And, we've all been talking about like being the first, only different. I'm from a small town in Arkansas, Jacksonville. I won't tell you the population, but it's small. And my grandfather was the first Black elected official there, and still is an alderman in our town. My dad has been pastoring there for 30 plus years. And when I think about them and the incredible women who raised me, it's just, it is true that they made a way out of no way, let my Southern roots come out a little bit there. And it is true that like they told us it's never too late to be the first. And at the same time, the privilege of being the first, or the privilege of being a leader, comes with real responsibility. And I saw them steward that responsibility well, and often in unseen ways, right behind the scenes, making this kind of conversation possible for me and for people who look like me. And so it's incredible to think about the legacy that came before and the legacy that we're all a part of, right? So I think about members of our community who are like, we just had a member of Deaf Color join a public board, right? And that's incredible. And not only did he join a public board, but is paying it forward and coaching and mentoring members of our community, and kind of lifting the veil on his professional path. That's powerful. And so there's something about having opportunity, stewarding that opportunity well, and paying it forward, like this cycle of advancement and partnership that I hope to continue to be a part of and to steward well.
I guess what I'll add to that is growing up, my favorite sport was baseball, and I know he's like becoming an idealized figure, but I definitely remember as a kid, I would take my baseball cap and I would write number 42 in it. And anytime the game got hard, or I thought like, this is not really going my way, I would just sort of take my hat off and just like remind myself, like, this is easy. Like what I'm going through right now, the fact that I have the opportunity to even be on this field and no one is calling me names, at least not right now, is in some ways because of folks who came before, like Jackie Robinson. And so, and because of that, one of my favorite quotes from him is that like a life is not important except for the impact that it has on others. And that's sort of like the ethos that I've tried to, live my adult life with. And so for me, it's just thinking about our fellows and what they're doing in the world. And, in some ways, like, what I want is not even my name in their mouth. Is I want like our fellows' names in, future generations' mouths, saying, I wouldn't have gotten to college but for, one of our fellows. I wouldn't have, been able to get a job but for Ami Banks Davis at Braven. I wouldn't have been able to, live in a world without police violence but for Brandon Anderson. And knowing that, like, those people I had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with, and, part of their journey towards success, included Camelback. And if my name is never brought up, that's fine with me. But, to me, that's what I feel like how you live on, whether your name is in people's mouths or not, is sort of like, did you contribute to certain things that were created that live well beyond you? And I think for me, that's what I think about.
Thank you. I have this theme of collective legacy. So it's not just one individual's impact in their personal journey. It's more of this collective experience, and really nurturing and putting the effort into having less transactional conversations of, okay, let's, move on, boom, 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 and taking a moment to just say, hi, how are you? So I just want to thank you all three for making today happen. I'm so happy that we're able to get all three of the organizations together on a call to bring awareness to your organizations. And for the snowflakes who are tuning in, if you want to learn more about these organizations, check out our diversity and inclusion website found on your Okta homepage. If you look down at the donation tab, you can learn all about these three organizations. They have some volunteering opportunities, which there's some things happening, which you'll hear from our newsletter. You'll also hear from our Slack channel. So be on the lookout for that. And feel free to reach out to any of them on LinkedIn. I'm just, we got to bring awareness to this. And again, that collective legacy, we all get a chance to make an impact today. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in here with us at the Snowflake Diversity and Inclusion Fireside Chat Cabin. If you want to hear more of this broader conversation with Nicole, Aaron, and Rhonda, please check out our recent newsletter or check out the Diversity and Inclusion website that could be found on your Okta homepage. Talk to you soon.